Stop performing, start living. You think age makes people softer, wiser, more at peace? Not always. For some, time isn't a teacher, it's an amplifier. Welcome to Ancient Stoic Secrets, where we explore the hidden truths about human nature and the art of mastering the self. As the years pass, most of us learn to loosen our grip on pride, to forgive more, to hold less, to live deeper. But not everyone walks that path. Some people, especially those trapped in their own reflection, grow harder instead of humbler. They polish the mask, but forget the face beneath it. You've seen it, maybe even felt it. A man once admired for his charm now sits in silence, angry at a world that's moved on. A woman who once drew every eye now measures her worth in memories and likes. What used to be confidence becomes control. What once looked like passion turns into panic. The Stoics warned us. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And when those thoughts are rooted in vanity, resentment, or fear of fading, the soul doesn't age, it decays. Time takes beauty. It takes status. It takes applause. But for those who've built their identity on being seen, that loss feels like death. And so they cling harder. They rewrite the past, blame the present, and chase validation that never lasts. Seneca said, "While we waste our days in hesitation, life is slipping away." And that's the tragedy. The narcissist doesn't live in time. They perform it. Every memory becomes a stage, every silence an enemy, every mirror a battlefield. But here's the Stoic truth. Collapse isn't the end. It's the beginning. When the mask finally cracks, something real can breathe again. If you have the courage to face it, to face yourself. So stay with me, because in this video, we'll explore the science, not to judge others, but to recognize the patterns within us all. And more importantly, how to turn decay into discipline and illusion into inner freedom. If you're ready to stop performing and start living, welcome home to Ancient Stoic Secrets, where we don't chase applause, we choose truth. 1. Isolation, the echo chamber of the ego. Imagine a man in his 60s. Once the center of every room, his laughter filled the air, his words carried weight. Now the house feels too big for one voice. He sits at a small table with one plate, one glass, one story he keeps repeating. He says, "People have changed. The world isn't what it used to be." But what if it's not the world that changed? What if it's him? This is how isolation begins. Not because people abandoned him, but because he abandoned humility. He demanded loyalty instead of earning it. He wanted admiration, not connection. And when the applause stopped, silence became unbearable. So he fills it with noise, TV, complaints, bitterness. He calls it peace, but it's really punishment. The Stoics understood this kind of loneliness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are soaked in resentment, your world will always feel hostile. Here's the painful truth. Narcissists aren't usually pushed away. They drive people away, one demand at a time. They confuse honesty with disrespect and boundaries with betrayal. So when the world starts pulling back, they call it maturity, but it's exile. They wear solitude like a crown, pretending it's wisdom. But solitude isn't the enemy. It's what you do with it that matters. The Stoic seeks silence to grow stronger, to observe, to heal, to listen. The narcissist uses silence to hide from themselves. So ask yourself, is your solitude a sanctuary or a sentence? Do you sit in stillness to discover peace or to protect pride? I once met a man named Robert. He was a retired executive, proud of his achievements, respected in his prime. But after retirement, he said something I never forgot. "Without my title, I feel invisible." He didn't realize that the people he called friends were really reflections,
mirrors that showed him who he wanted to be, not who he was. That's what unchecked ego does. It builds a kingdom of one and then wonders why no one visits. Real strength isn't about being admired. It's about being at peace when no one's watching. When you can sit alone and feel whole, that's not loneliness, that's freedom. 2. The past. When memory becomes a prison. It used to be me. That's how every story begins. The promotion, the victory, the glory days that never seem to end, at least in memory. For some, nostalgia is a gentle warmth, but for others, it's a trap, a golden cage built from yesterday's applause. They tell the same stories again and again, polishing the past like it's still alive. But every time they retell it, it loses a little more truth and gains more decoration. Because deep down they know, the present has grown too quiet. Seneca warned us, while we waste our days in hesitation, life is slipping away. And yet, so many of us still live like time owes us something, like our best chapters are behind us, and our only purpose now is to keep reading the old ones aloud. Why do we do this? Because the past feels safe. It never rejects us. It never changes. But the present, it demands courage. The narcissist clings to the past not because they love it, but because they fear the now. They fear being ordinary, forgotten, unseen. They confuse relevance with worth, applause with love. And the irony is the more they chase their old reflection, the less real they become. I once spoke to a woman named Claire, a former TV host who'd once been adored by thousands. She told me, "I can't post a picture without checking how many likes I get." She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing proof. Proof that she still mattered. That's what happens when your sense of self is built on mirrors. Every crack feels like death. But here's the Stoic way out. Face the present, even when it's imperfect, dull, unglamorous. Because that's where real life happens. Ask yourself, are you still performing for ghosts? Or are you ready to start living again? The Stoics taught us that peace isn't found in remembering what was, but in embracing what is. Every moment you truly accept, no matter how small, becomes a victory of the soul. Time doesn't take away meaning, it reveals it. And when you stop running from the mirror, you realize something beautiful. You were never supposed to stay the same. You were meant to grow. Because nostalgia can be a lullaby or a warning. It can remind you where you came from, or it can keep you from ever arriving where you're meant to be. 3. The victim mindset. When pain becomes a stage. When admiration fades, some people don't disappear. They reinvent themselves as victims. They trade praise for pity. And in that quiet exchange, they find a new form of power. You'll hear it in their stories. Always dramatic, always tragic. I gave everything, and look how I was treated. At first, it sounds noble. You want to help. You want to comfort. But slowly you realize something's off. Their pain doesn't heal. It performs. They turn every struggle into a spotlight, every hardship into a hook. Their suffering becomes a kind of currency, something they spend to keep attention flowing. And the more you listen, the tighter the rope becomes. Guilt disguised as love. The Stoics had a word for this: attachment to illusion. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." But the narcissist doesn't react. They replay. They live inside the same wound, decorating it, narrating it, performing it for new audiences. Why? Because being the victim means never being responsible. It's the perfect shield against growth. You can't evolve if your entire identity depends on being wronged. I once knew a man named Charles. He'd lost a business partner years ago and told the story every time we met. How he was betrayed, how he was cheated, how no one understood him. At first, I felt sympathy. Then I realized he wasn't looking for healing. He was looking for validation. His pain had become his brand. That's what happens when suffering becomes a story you won't stop telling. It stops being pain and turns into identity. But here's the Stoic truth. Pain can be your teacher or your trap. If you face it, it transforms you. If you feed it, it consumes you. So ask yourself, are you healing or just rehearsing? Are you sharing your pain to connect or to control? Because the difference between growth and decay is often just one honest answer away. 4. Control. The last illusion of power. When charm no longer works, control takes its place. It's a quiet shift, from persuasion to pressure, from warmth to warning. Picture an aging father at the dinner table, once loved, once admired. Now every word he speaks lands like a command. No one argues anymore, not because they agree, but because they've surrendered.
He mistakes obedience for respect, silence for harmony. But the truth is, the room doesn't honor him. It fears him. That's the tragedy of control. It can silence people, but it can't make them stay. The Stoics knew this illusion well. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And yet, the narcissist spends a lifetime mastering others. They believe control is strength, but it's really fear wearing armor. Fear of being ignored, fear of losing relevance, fear of facing the self without an audience. Control feels powerful in the moment. It gives the illusion of order, of dominance. But every act of control carries a hidden cost: distance. The more you force people to stay, the faster they slip away. I met a woman once, a retired teacher, brilliant, commanding, proud. Her children rarely called. She told me they've changed. But as we spoke longer, I realized she'd built her entire life around being right. There was no space for anyone else's truth. And that's what control does. It replaces love with fear and turns connection into compliance. The Stoic way is the opposite: to lead without demanding, to influence through presence, not pressure, to build strength not by holding tighter but by letting go. Because real power isn't about having the last word, it's about having peace when you don't. So ask yourself, do you want people quiet around you or present with you? Do you want obedience or understanding? One is built on fear, the other on freedom. And freedom, true inner freedom, can only exist where control ends. 5. The hunger for validation, when attention replaces meaning. There's a kind of silence that terrifies the ego, the silence that comes when no one's watching. For a narcissist, that silence feels like death, so they chase noise, likes, applause, recognition, anything that says, "I still matter." Once they were admired for their presence, now they cling to visibility. Every photo, every quote, every story online becomes a plea. Remember me. But the Stoics would ask, remember you for what? Marcus Aurelius said, "If fame comes after death, I am not in a hurry for it." To the Stoic, peace doesn't need an audience, but to the fragile ego, attention is oxygen. The modern world feeds that hunger. Social media rewards performance, not presence. We confuse engagement for connection and likes for love. But attention is a currency that loses value the more you spend it. I met a man once, a former musician who used to fill stadiums. Now he spends hours online, arguing with strangers, defending a glory that no longer exists. He told me, "I just want people to know I still have something to say." And I asked him, what if the one person who needs to hear it is you? That's the tragedy, when we forget to live for meaning and start living for mirrors. The more we seek validation, the emptier we feel when it fades. It's an addiction that always demands a higher dose, louder, flashier, more desperate, until the applause stops and all that's left is panic. But here's the truth. When you stop needing to be seen, you start to truly see. When you no longer depend on others to prove your worth, you rediscover who you are. Because admiration feeds the ego, but silence feeds the soul.
So ask yourself, if no one ever applauded again, would you still do what you do? Would you still speak, create, love, and live with the same heart? If your answer is yes, that's not arrogance. That's freedom. That's where the Stoic stands, grounded, unseen, but unshakably whole. 6. Anger and resentment, the fire that consumes its keeper. When admiration dies and control slips away, rage often takes its place. It's the last illusion of strength, a spark that feels powerful for a moment, but leaves ashes in its wake. I once spoke with a man who'd lost everything: his job, his family, his peace. He told me they turned their backs on me. But when we spoke longer, it became clear he'd turned his back first, years ago, every time someone tried to tell him the truth. That's how resentment grows, slowly, silently. It starts as pride and ends as poison. Seneca warned us, anger, if not restrained, is more harmful to us than the injury that provokes it. But the aging narcissist doesn't believe that. They think rage proves they still matter, that their voice still shakes the room. But it's not power, it's panic. It's the echo of an ego collapsing under the weight of its own denial. Here's the paradox. The more they shout, the less they're heard. The more they try to control through fear, the faster love dies. And when the storm clears, what remains is silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that follows a collapse. I've seen people spend decades fighting ghosts, old betrayals, old words, old wounds that should have healed long ago. They say, "I'll never forgive them." But what they really mean is, "I don't know who I am without this pain." The Stoic path is different. It doesn't deny pain, it redeems it. It teaches you to look at the wound and say, "This too is part of me, but it does not define me." Anger feels like fire in your hand. It warms you at first, but hold it too long and it burns through everything you love. So ask yourself, who are you trying to punish? Them or yourself? Because every moment spent in resentment is a moment stolen from peace. The Stoics knew the real battle isn't between you and the world. It's between you and your own reaction to it. And when you master that, no insult, no betrayal, no loss can ever master you again. That's what it means to live with quiet strength. Not the kind that shouts to be heard, but the kind that stands still while the storm rages and simply says, "I am no longer ruled by anger. I am free." 7. Collapse and rebirth, when the mask finally breaks. There comes a moment, quiet or chaotic, when the mask can no longer hold. For some, it happens in a whisper. An empty house, a silent phone, a reflection they can't recognize anymore. For others, it's an explosion. Affairs, addiction, financial ruin, broken families. But no matter how it unfolds, the story ends the same way. The performance collapses. Everything they built, the image, the control, the illusion, falls apart. Because a life built on perception cannot survive reality. And yet, that collapse, as brutal as it feels, is not the end. It's the beginning. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way." The Stoics saw every breakdown not as punishment, but as an invitation, an opening to rebuild from truth.
But when his marriage ended and his business fell apart, he found himself sitting in a car at 2 a.m., staring at nothing. He told me, "I don't even know who I am without success." That's the moment the mask cracked. And through that crack, something real began to breathe. He started small. Morning walks, writing down 3 honest thoughts a day, paying off debts, calling the daughter he hadn't spoken to in years, not to impress her, not to explain, but to apologize. 2 years later, he wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but he was real. That's what collapse can do when you stop running from it. It burns away everything false, leaving only what's true. We spend our lives afraid of losing people, status, beauty, control. But sometimes, what we lose is exactly what was keeping us from peace. Collapse is life's way of saying,
You've carried this lie long enough. Put it down. The Stoics taught that every fall is a teacher. It strips you bare, but it also frees you from illusion. Because once you have nothing left to prove, you finally have space to become who you are. So if your life feels like it's unraveling, don't rush to rebuild the mask. Let it fall. Let the pieces scatter. Then, ask yourself, what's left when the noise is gone? If what remains is honesty, humility, and a heartbeat that still hopes, that's enough. Enough to begin again. Enough to be reborn. The Stoic path isn't about avoiding collapse. It's about walking through it. Eyes open, ego silent, heart steady. Because the fall doesn't destroy you. It removes everything that isn't you. And when you rise again, slower, quieter, wiser, you'll finally understand what the Stoics meant by true freedom. It's not found in applause, control, or admiration. It's found in authenticity, in being whole, even when no one is watching. That's where the real power begins. Not in the mask, but in the courage to live without one. 8. The Stoic path to renewal, from illusion to inner freedom. When the storm finally ends, what's left isn't ruin, it's clarity. Because collapse, when faced with courage, doesn't destroy you. It strips away everything false so you can finally meet yourself without disguise. That's the quiet miracle of breaking. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the mask. The Stoics never promised a life without pain. They promised a way through it, a way that transforms suffering into strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And that's where true healing begins, not in theory, but in daily action. It's in waking up early and choosing honesty over ego. It's in saying, "I was wrong," instead of pretending you never are. It's in listening, not to be right, but to understand. We live in a world obsessed with appearances, where image outruns integrity and visibility replaces value. But the Stoic path asks something harder. Can you live beautifully, even when no one notices? Can you find meaning without applause, peace without control, confidence without comparison? I once spoke with a woman who had lost almost everything: her business, her marriage, her health. She told me, "I thought I was broken, but really, I was just being rebuilt." That's the essence of Stoicism, not suppression, but transformation. Turning pain into presence, turning loss into wisdom. Because every time you choose awareness over avoidance, you grow lighter. Every time you let go of who you thought you were, you make room for who you truly are. The Stoics remind us freedom isn't found in mastering the world, it's found in mastering the self. Not in controlling others, but in controlling how we respond. Not in chasing perfection, but in accepting reality, fully, deeply, honestly. So if you're standing among the ruins of your old life, don't rush to rebuild. Sit for a while. Listen to the silence. There's wisdom in it, a whisper that says, "This is where truth begins." And when you finally rise, slower, steadier, humbler, you'll realize something profound. Peace isn't given to you, it's built by you. That's the real secret of Stoic living. It's not about escaping the world. It's about walking through it with clarity, compassion, and quiet strength. No mask, no performance, just truth. And when you can live that way, when applause no longer defines you, and solitude no longer frightens you,
That's when you've truly mastered the art of being free. If you've made it this far, take a moment to breathe. Not every ending is a loss. Sometimes it's the first honest breath you've taken in years. The Stoics taught us that truth doesn't shout. It whispers. It waits for us in silence, in stillness, in the moments when the noise finally fades. That's what this space is about. Here on Ancient Stoic Secrets, we don't chase noise. We uncover clarity. We learn how to face life not with arrogance, but with awareness. Not with control, but with calm. So if this message spoke to you, if it made you think, or maybe helped you see yourself a little clearer, share it with someone who needs that same reminder. Someone who's still carrying a mask that's too heavy to wear. And if you want to keep walking this path with me, learning how to live stronger, simpler, and more peaceful, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Ancient Stoic Secrets. Your support helps these lessons reach more people who are ready to grow beyond the noise. Remember this: the goal isn't to live louder, it's to live deeper, to become so grounded that nothing outside you can shake the peace inside you. So until next time, stand still, breathe slow, and choose truth over applause. Because that's where real freedom begins.